Why on earth have you clicked on an art channel and found a man holding some mustard and a little spray? Well, let me tell you, today we are looking at granulation. So this is actually salt, which I'm sure you have in your house. No matter what your doctor tells you, I'm sure that you have some salt in your house. This is rather more expensive. This is called Aqua Granulalia spray. It's granulation medium. So there are a few brands of this. This one's made by Schmincke. What it does is it adds texture to your watercolour. And we're going to try these out. We're going to compare it being used in cheap colours and expensive colours and compare it to a more natural granulating colour. And we're going to see what happens. And by the end, you'll know, hopefully, is it worth buying this expensive granulation medium, or is this just another one of those little sort of fads not worth having? So the first thing you might want to know, of course, is what is granulation? Well, granulation is where the pigments settle on the page. And so instead of having a flat wash of colour, you get this sort of granular appearance. A classic example would be anything from the Daniel Smith Lunar range. For example, this is Lunar Black. And you can immediately see how instead of being a flat colour, it has all these different pigments settling. And granulation simply happens because the pigments are large. The pigment the sediments within the colour are rather large. If I take my Hansa yellow, you'll find you just simply don't get that effect. You get a smooth wash of colour. Similarly, if I take my Scarlet Lake, you get a smooth wash of colour. There's a little bit of texture because I'm using cold pressed paper, but really it's a smooth wash of colour compared to this. Lastly, not least, we'll use Cobalt Blue by Daniel Smith. Is a sort of moderately granulating colour. So you can now hopefully see the difference between heavily granulating, normal, and moderately granulating. Now, the reason that this effect is sought after is because it's really interesting, it's really quick. Some people hate it, but people like me also love it. But cheap colours tend not to granulate because granulating colours tend to be natural, expensive pigments. So if we take this Cobalt Blue, this is a Cobalt Blue by Medium, which I reviewed on my channel not long ago. And you should be able to see that actually it's rather flat. So compare it to that Cobalt Blue. It's still a lovely colour, not quite as vibrant, but also certainly much flatter. So what we're going to do now is look at how we can take these colours, or even these expensive colours, and turn them into something which is full of texture. So since we got this out, let's just start. This is going to be our Cobalt Blue by Medium. That's our first colour we'll try out. And all I'm going to do now is do another little swatch here and another little swatch over here. And then in the salt column, we'll add some salt and see what happens. And then in the spray column, we'll add a little spray and we will see what happens. And I'm now just going to continue to do that with all different colours. And when things have dried, we'll really see what's what with our different effects. So the next colour I'm using is a Scarlet by Medium again. Again, just adding salt. And here's where I had my first little issue with the spray. It just is really hard to control where it goes. So you see it went all over my little salt column. So had to try again. So again, we've got our Cobalt Blue by Medium. This time I went to Cobalt Blue by Daniel Smith. And again, when I came to my spray, we get this amazing dramatic effect everywhere. So I'm learning I need to control the spray a little bit better. So final time, I promise, final time. We're doing the same swatches. This time, this top layer is the Medium colours, Cobalt Blue and Scarlet, followed by the Cobalt Blue by Daniel Smith and some Hansa Yellow by Daniel Smith. Now we can pop our salt in, choosing to sprinkle it on this time to get a really nice spread of that salt in all the colours, and spraying hopefully more successfully. And you can see actually there's spray everywhere, including in the yellow. Now note there is texture in that yellow because it will be important in a little bit when we look at what's actually happening. And just like that, we're completely dry. Now we can do one of a couple of things to the salt. Either brush it off, or sometimes it's a little bit stuck down. So we just gently move it with our finger, being very gentle not to damage the paper. And then when it's loosened up, lifted up from underneath, just like, oh, it is pretty much there, we can then brush it off. And we can now look at the effect. So at the top we've got our very flat medium colours. And you can see that the salt has had a bit of an effect on both of these. Not a huge effect actually up here, maybe because I had more colour, but you can still see lots of variation going on. And then the Schmincke, the spray here, has had actually quite a dramatic effect. This doesn't look very real to me. It looks like you've done something to affect the paint rather than getting that natural branching effect that we saw in the Lunar Black. Down here we've got our Daniel Smith colours. Here, for some reason, in both of these, the salt has had a much bigger effect, especially in this Hansa Yellow. You see this branching, this natural effect sort of cascading out. There's very little effect. It's very subtle. You can see it, but I'm not sure if it will show up on camera. Very subtle effect of the spray over here. And here, you've got a fairly marked effect of the spray, quite similar to what's going on in the others. So, there you go. Is it worth it? Have you tried it? Have you tried the others? Like there's the Winsor Newton Granulation Medium, and I'm sure there's many others out there as well. Let me know your thoughts and what you find most useful. Is there any other mediums you like using in your watercolours, for example? And I will see you in the next sketch. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.